Well, thank you so much, Dragos, for inviting me out to come speak today. Actually, it's the second time that I've spoken at AIGeeks, so thank you. Thank you, Julian, for that great introduction to deep learning. For those of you who don't know, I worked with Julian at Sensible, and this guy basically taught me everything I know about deep neural networks. So if you're really looking to dive in deep, he's definitely the guy to talk to. He knows the math right through to all the high-level knowledge. So he's just a tremendous person. Just a little bit about myself. I'm Brad. I'm the founder of Electric Brain. I've been doing software for about 10 years. If you count teenagers, then it's like more like 14 years, but those years don't count. I've been doing AI more specifically, basically, since I got to Sensible. So I've been in AI for 4 years, and then more recently at Electric Brain, we've been doing AI services for over a year now. So I'm just going to dive in deep and quick. So what is AI? What is machine learning? I like to say that AI, really what defines it is its emphasis on the data, that we have algorithms now where you can use the exact same algorithm, and if you get a very different data set, you get a very different result. We've been doing this for years. Machine learning is nothing new, and it has you might say deep neural networks go back to the 60s, but it has its roots in stats. It has its roots in the foundations of scientific knowledge and the math that we use to try and determine what is right and what is wrong. So I don't think it's everything new. So what is all this AI hype about? I like to say that the thing that defines AI and machine learning is trust. Although we've been doing and improving on machine learning algorithms for a long time, the big difference these days with AI is that we're willing to trust the machines enough to remove the humans out of the process. So the example I like to use here is that, say you have an AI system to help you hire people. In the past, you might have had, you might have logged on to Bullhorn or some other, staffing management system, and it would have told you, connected you with potential candidates, and you would be like, oh, okay, I kind of like what it's suggesting with this candidate, I don't like this, and ultimately as an HR person, you would just be taking the advice of the machine, and it would just be one data point in all of the data points that you're looking when evaluating a candidate. I like to say that the difference with AI today is we have those machine learning algorithms just the same, but now instead of having that person double check the machine, now we just let the machine take the choice. When that AI tells you who is the best candidate to hire, instead of having an HR person clear that decision, the candidate is just hired, and they just show up, and you're like, wow, you're the one the AI chose. Welcome to the team, you know what I mean? Like AI is about trust. That's really kind of the distinguishing factor of thing. Always wanted to coin a phrase. So this is what I believe. I like to think about this idea all the time. Some people call it the singularity, but I think before the singularity, long before or even if the singularity doesn't happen, this is definitely still possible. There will be a time when almost every single business process in every single company is going to be automated, right through HR, to the extent that HR even exists at that time, right through to operations, finance, everything I believe is eventually going to be automated. And it's the people like me who go around with this strong belief that this can be done, promoting this and telling everyone that your jobs are maybe in jeopardy. Someday I think, and maybe this is 100 or 200 years off, companies as large as RBC and as small as mine will have basically the same number of human employees because everything else will be done by machines. So I'm just going to jump into a little bit of history here, a little background. Automation is nothing new to the financial services industry. It started like this. It started with this isn't automation. So this is pre-automation. You had people, and they would literally just do the math, and they would calculate things and maintain these spreadsheets in paper and pen. Then we came up with pre-calculated tables. You no longer had to do your annuity formulas yourself. You would just get a sheet, look it up in a book. Well, here's this value. Then I multiply it in. Suddenly, that's saving me time. Then it moved even further. Now, this, my friends, is a very fine example of a mechanical calculator. This is one of the best. I've always wanted to actually be able to hold one in person. They don't have it at the Computer History Museum, unfortunately. But so mechanical calculation eventually trumped mental calculation that made us more efficient. Then there was the introduction of the mainframes. And so I like to, financial institutions kind of get a bad rap nowadays for being uninnovative. And maybe they are, or maybe they're not. But certainly in this era, they were one of the first in our industry to really fully adopt computing. And maybe it's just because the ROI was there, just because there's so much computation, so much calculation that mainframes were worth it. But I think there's something a little bit more fundamental to the nature of finance that makes it worthwhile. So I mean, after mainframes, then there was personal computation at the opposite end of the spectrum. You were able to do, this is a very fine program. If you can ever download a simulator, actually play with the original visicalc, it's a geek stream. It's just an amazing, revolutionary piece of program. No one actually bought this. They bought some Lotus Notes, or Lotus in general just took them out really quickly. visicalc never made any money. Famous story of those guys going broke. But that turned into the spreadsheet that we all now know today. We've been using spreadsheets, and we continue to use spreadsheets. I mean, I use spreadsheets, and I'm an AI guy, still have lots of my own financial projections. So spreadsheets, of course, they help automate a lot of the ad hoc sort of one-off calculations. And it continues. The modern innovation now is big data, is Cloudera, is Tableau, is Hadoop, is Power BI, and these things are being adopted in droves, in my opinion, by not just financial institutions, but by industries wide. So what's all the hype? Financial world is no stranger to either big data or automation. I mean, big data has existed in finance since the beginning of the entire financial industry. So you might ask, why is AI suddenly being talked about? Why is it suddenly become this big new phenomenon? And I would like to say, at least in my opinion, the big difference here is, for a long time, computers were really good at working with numbers. We were great at working with tables and financial analysis and risk and mortgage and modeling. But now with the introduction of these AI algorithms, we finally have just as good algorithms, just as good techniques for working with text, for working with images, for working with audio, for working with video, for working with the full variety and types of data that we actually see in the real world. So whereas before, you would be able to automate the mathematics that go behind, the annuities on this, complicated bond, now you can actually analyze the forms and the due diligence and the compliance that went behind that as well. So AI really, I would say the distinguishing factor today is that we just suddenly have a lot more data that we can process using techniques that are somewhat well established. So I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to start talking about some of the startups that we're seeing in the AI and fintech space. And really, I think it starts with the financial advisor. Wealth management is massively profitable. If any of you have run your own wealth management, I haven't, but I know people who do. These guys, you don't have to do a lot to make good money. And unfortunately, where there is a lot of money, there is also an opportunity for disruption. And so we're seeing in the fintech AI space, robo-advising is really kind of taking off. And robo-advising can take on a whole bunch of different forms. And we see automation at the intake place, at client discovery, looking through, not just learning about what the client wants, which, maybe you could survey them or interview them, but actually reviewing their existing finances. Rarely does a person come to you with a clean slate, putting in their first dollar. They already own a house, or maybe they own multiple houses if they're really a wealth management client, or a boat, and they have a lot of assets that you're going to need to dig into. But that client that ultimately just comes down to a lot of documents and a lot of things that can be processed. Educating the client about finance. Chatbot technology plays a big role here. Previously, there's a lot you would have to teach to your client in order to maybe make them believe you that you know what you're doing. But these days, that not only is that just putting content out available, which is not really AI, but with chatbots, you can really personalize that experience. The actual investment recommendations, of course, is very easy to automate, and the portfolio management we're seeing with high frequency trading and with end-to-end systems, you see a lot going on of innovation in robot advisors. So I have actually come to believe more recently that almost all advisory jobs are in jeopardy. That everything you see here, accountants, tax advisors, lawyers, insurance, all these professional jobs revolve around knowledge. And I would say with today's natural language processing ability, most of these jobs could be fully automated end to end. Is there a lot of companies actually automating this end-to-end? I don't know. Well, I mean, I see there are actually a bunch for each of these categories. If you want me to talk in detail, talk to me after. But there's a lot of danger in a lot of the core business of what a financial institution and even the small and medium-sized financial players like these advisors, they're all really in trouble. Accounting ultimately comes down to either working with documents or working with people to try and get documents that they're either withholding or they haven't supplied to you. So here's an example of some of the startups that are working in this space. We see Wealthsimple, great Toronto-based company here. Betterment, Motif, and Folio are some of the bigger American firms. These guys will not have a person interact with you. Everything they do is technology-based. They are technology-based. They are really technology companies that offer a financial institution services. So next big area, customer service, very ripe for automation in financial institutions. We've seen IVRs for a long time. When you call up basically any of our big Canadian companies now, and you talk to their customer service, it no longer asks, please press 5 for this. I mean, some people still do that, but a lot of them ask you a question and just say, would please state your problem. I think that what we're going to see over the next little while is that IVRs go beyond routing you to some specific department and what specific customer service agent that you're going to be looking at. We're going to see with chatbot technology that you can really automate that process end to end. Like there really does not need to be a person on the phone anymore. You can, all of this can be automated. It's simply a matter of integrating that natural language processing capability with the complicated back-end infrastructure that actually connects. Someone once told me that an average call center agent interacts with 20 different back-end software applications. And so the real hindrance is not the AI. The AI is definitely there. The thing that slows it down is just getting that AI integrated into the complexity of the environment in a financial institution. So here's some great companies that we see operating and automating customer service. DeepPixel, wonderful Toronto-based company. If you guys are looking to use chatbot technology, I would encourage you to reach out to them. Digital Genius is another one of the ones that I kind of personally like. I find their approach, it may seem a little bit more complicated, but their approach is a lot more thorough and really able to handle the full variety of complex call center type applications. So next, document processing, one of my favorites. So this is actually a classic sort of use case, which is already sort of halfway through penetrating in a lot of different circumstances. OCR and ICR have been around for a while, and they really have not worked very well for a while. We have been using these processes on mortgage applications, credit cards, checks, receipts, basically anything where you have that physical handwritten document. But for a long time, ICR technology has really suffered on handwriting. So it works well when you kind of force the user to write one letter at a time and kind of break it up independently, but it really did not work well on really kind of free-flowing handwriting. But what we're seeing now is actually that the technology is caught up to what you want, and where previously you might have had to keep a human in that loop where you want to double check that the machine actually correctly read the OCR, which kind of defeats the point of using OCR in the first place. But fortunately, a lot of companies have had to do this when they adopted these technologies. I think moving forward, you're actually going to see that this can be done end to end, and that all of these paper documents handwriting or not handwriting, will be able to be reliably processed. So here are some of the companies that work in this area. I'm sure some of you have heard of them. At Sensible, we used to use Abby technology. Look into Captricity if you're really interested in the handwriting recognition. I think they've made really big waves. Their blog is, some of the research that they've done on handwriting recognition, really, really cutting edge stuff. Here's this might I really like this use case. So automating the insurance adjuster. Now I pitch insurance companies probably once every 2 months, and I come with this use case usually. I come to propose to them this. And there are real companies that can automate this process. You used to require a person to actually either come to the car accident or come physically to the vehicle to actually take a look. Is it actually broken? Is it actually damaged? Is it damaged in the way that they propose? You don't want to be taken for a ride as an insurance company. If you just eased up on those business processes, the fraudsters would catch up just as quickly. But what we're finding now is that instead of having to use an insurance adjuster, you can do this very reliably from photos. Local Toronto-based company Singularity is actually working on this exact use case. What you can do is if you can get out from you wouldn't get out from this car crash, but if it's a slightly more minor car crash, get out, open up your insurance app, snap photos of your vehicle, and that AI technology will be able to predict what are the damaged parts, how much damage, what is the likelihood of frame damage, which is not so easy to pick on the photos, and actually come up with a nearly accurate, to within 2 or 3% accurate prediction on the repair costs of that vehicle. So really just amazing what we're able to do these days. And with those level of accuracies, significantly fewer claims actually have to be routed to an adjuster. The adjuster is no longer necessary. And actually, I've seen there's one Silicon Valley-based company called Lemonade, and they are essentially an insurance company, but their insurance is offered 100% through AI. And so if you use Lemonade Insurance and you get into a car crash, you do exactly what I just said. You get out to the extent that you can, open up your app, snap photos of your vehicle, it comes up with an estimate, you hit accept, claim is done. The money is already being deposited into your account within 5 minutes of you in that car crash. So it's really quite amazing what's capable. Another use case that came my way was using satellite imagery to try and predict insurance damage. What actually, in this particular case, the individual I was working with was trying to do lead generation for roof repair companies. But I actually think it's the technology that he developed is just as applicable for insurance claims as well. If you're in hail, for example, in Alberta, that can damage, produce significant damages. So, here are some of the startups that are working in this area. As I mentioned, actually, Toronto Singularity is working on this, but they currently, to my understanding, don't offer this as a product yet. But Tractable, Cape, and WriteIndem do offer this today if you want to try and automate insurance adjusting within your technology. So maybe onto the darker side of artificial intelligence. So sometimes, artificial intelligence can tip on some controversial activities, and it's not always necessarily automating the things that everybody enjoys or likes. We actually see AI technology in debt collection taking basically 2 different paths. There is one path, which is sort of like a predictive path, where they're using AI technology to help the professional debt collector decide what to do. Do I play hardball? Do I play softball? Do I visit their house? Or you could even imagine if you were a little bit more on the fringe, like, do I threaten their family or do I harass them or something? Like, all of those outputs, which you might think are crazy, are very much within the guidelines of what you can do with predictive analytics. It's all about what do I say in order to get this person to pay their debts. But there's another route that this is taking with one company, at least in the companies I'm going to show here, where they're automating this end-to-end. They're automating the letters. They're automating the phone calls. They're automating subpoenas into court. They're automating procuring paralegals to fight that battle. Like they're literally the entire process end to end of debt collection can't, like, it wouldn't work on every type of debt collection. Big complicated debts, obviously, you might want a professional debt collector, but, and for parking tickets and other things like that is definitely very possible. So that's Collect AI right there. I would check them out if you're really interested in automating debt collection. eCollect and TrueAccord, two other companies that are doing very interesting stuff in this area. One of my favorite use cases. So automating compliance. So I'm a big believer in the power of natural language processing. I really think that the technology is there today. And what we can do with AI technology is that we can review project plans, we can review user stories, requirements documents, and actually automatically determine those regulatory controls, those internal controls, maybe it's not always a regulation issue, those laws that are relevant to that story. I literally did this project with a local company here called Blueprint Software Systems. So if you're looking for technology like this, get them on the phone because they're building this out and they're going to be launching this soon. But I think it goes beyond just compliance review and just beyond the law. I really think that most forms of due diligence can be automated, whether that's reviewing a startup like mine in order, checking our business plan and our finances in order to make sure that we're kosher for an investment, right through to looking at a new bond. If someone, if Rogers puts out some new $100 million bond and they've collateralized it against some weird building, like you want to go in and check that document. You want to check, is that building worth what they're saying it's worth? When was the last time that they had it appraised? Maybe they had it appraised like 10 years ago and they're using that as their claim. So, there's a lot of questions that you're going to ask when you're doing due diligence that essentially comes down to emailing or calling someone to get some documents and then pouring through those documents for the supporting facts of your due diligence checklist. So, as well, auditing a public company's books. There's actually my next slide is not going to show this, but there's a company based in Ottawa called MindBridge AI where they've automated this process where they can show, here's a transaction, here's all of the chain of supporting documentation for that transaction. The past emails that you had with that salesperson or that supplier. Here's where they offered you a discount that you never got, for example. So MindBridge AI, I think for the most part, actually, I see this as an open opportunity. Haven't seen a whole lot of companies really attacking the due diligence problem besides MindBridge AI, so check them out if you're really interested in this use case. So if you're looking for your next fintech startup, I would say that due diligence is a wide open avenue for attack. This doesn't even count AI-based trading algorithms, which have, I think taken a lot of the interest and the public imagination of AI and finance. Of course, are all forms of classic data science and predictive modeling, churn modeling, risk modeling, all of these things. Instead of just using decision trees or linear regression, these things are just as well improved with the deep neural network techniques that Julian was earlier talking about. And also, in functional departments as well, there's huge opportunities to apply AI technology beyond the core business in human resources when you're picking and sourcing candidates. In information technology and cybersecurity, AI is actually detecting intrusions and detecting injection attempts on your APIs. Sales and marketing, writing the outbound sales messages. How do you personalize that message? How do you choose what to say in order to best convert that end customer? When do you offer coupons? How do you prevent churn? So AI technology also is lending a hand in all of these sort of classic, more traditional use cases of data science. So I didn't really get into these in any big detail because I don't like to say it. AI is coming. The AI dream is going to take 40 years. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take us a long time to really thoroughly penetrate our society with automation and elevate us all to the next level. But I don't think it's going to be technology holding us back. When I work with the technology, for the most part, it's there today. It's the people that will be holding us back. It's the processes that'll be holding us back. And so if, for those companies willing to be on the leading edge, they will gain a massive massive competitive advantage in the marketplace. So it's not the technology that holds us back. It's really just the people and whether people believe or don't believe in the technology. So a little bit of as my last slide here, shameless self-promotion. Electric Brain, what we do is we build custom AI solutions using some in-house technology that we've created. And we typically focus on cost-out projects where you essentially have your existing employees teach the AI how to do their job. We find that these projects are usually the least risky and have the best business cases. So this is what we focused on. That's it. Any questions?
Hi. Just wondering that we recently saw that fintech phenomena did not get that attention or progress that we were anticipating. Do you think that AI would also face that as well or not?
Fizzle out? Well, all things go through like a hype cycle. So I certainly believe that AI is reaching the peak of its hype cycle. It's probably going to peak mid to late next year, like October, like 1 year from now. Literally, I think that's going to be the high point of the hype cycle in AI, and it's going to die down. But then it's going to pick back up again. That's how all of these technology trends go. Fintech was the same way, where peaked. All of the bad companies got sorted out. They all go bankrupt, and everybody kind of stops interest. But all of the ones who are good, who survived, they start to grow and take over the whole industry. So you're right, it will fizzle out, but then it'll come back again bigger.
Have you thought about an AI that would validate another AI? Because I think whatever your outcome of your companies or other companies are coming up with AI solutions, there should be a way to validate all possible, the ways of behavior of AI, and also to figure out when it actually the AI will fail.
So depending on what you mean by validation and what you're trying to validate, there are definitely solutions that exist today for accomplishing that. We see in a lot of cases people are using AI technology to probe inwards on deep neural networks to try and understand what the heck it's doing. One of the biggest problems in AI right now, especially with deep learning, is that you don't actually know why the network makes the decision that it makes. It's just kind of has its output, and trying to understand it on a layer by layer level when you have like an ImageNet now, the leading network is 152 layers. So trying to understand that depth is really quite difficult. But we see actually using neural networks where you can, the mathematics here are a little bit twisty, but essentially you train a second neural network to understand what that layer is doing and how it's contributing to the end result. I think on the question of testing whether an AI is actually AI and not a human, I also know of there's technologies like it's an extension essentially of reCAPTCHA. But I know there's at least one company in Silicon Valley that's trying to work on, you might say, bot detection as a product. And I think that's going to be a very serious product. But on the flip side of bot detection, there's if it declares that something is a bot, it's very well decided between AI and human. So did that answer your question? Oh, failure. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, this is something that I wouldn't suggest we're going to use another AI to try and find the failures in AI, because that's error amplification. So if you have one flaw in your validating AI, it's going to lead to amplification of errors in the AIs that it's trying to validate. But I would say that, what was I going to say? I don't think I have a good answer to your question at this time, actually. Come talk to me afterwards. We're going into it in more depth. Oh.
Okay, let's have one more question. And okay, actually this side, sorry. Yeah.
Just wanted to know, like the insurance claim, fintech that you showed, especially the example of Lemonade, do you think that is going to sort of encourage the development of adversarial examples to beat the AI that Lemonade is using? Because now you're pretty much removing all the friction from the process, and it becomes lucrative for fraudsters to come in and generate adversarial examples to make false claims.
100%, absolutely, yeah. So to his point, so there are tricks that you can use with deep neural networks and image classification, which just blow my mind, where people, they take like an image of a kitten and they modify it just slightly, and it's detected as a computer or as a desktop. They've essentially fooled the algorithm, but when you, the human, look at it, it still looks like a kitten. So very much, we're almost certainly going to see that in Lemonade AI insurance, but there's already a lot of research. Ian Goodfellow's put out a ton of research on this subject of how do you detect and guard against adversarial examples. Essentially what you do actually is you can come up with a ton of those. So for each image you have in your data set, come up with 10 adversarial examples. If you include those back in your data set, your network not only gets more accurate, it's like infinitely more resistant to adversarial examples. So I would say that tricks like that, for sure, that like, if you want to do some fraud, I would go do it right now because they're probably still prone to that. But give it a few more years and I don't think it's going to be an issue anymore.
Okay, thank you very much, Brad.
Thank you.